everyone. Good to see you. My name is Ed Kelly, and I am your interim executive director of your church. You may not know that. I know I don't know a lot of you, so I thought I'd start with just a little bit of introduction. Now, just so you know, I am completely different than Jesse up here. I'm pretty feisty. So if you have a proverbial seatbelt, you might want to click that in, because we're going to talk about John 11. And before we do, I want to just tell you a little bit about my history. I grew up in Centralia, Washington, about an hour south of here. My mom was divorced 5 times before I was 18, seen all sorts of stepfathers, etc. A lot of interesting things there. A little bit later, I went into radio because my dad owned and bought and sold radio stations. Functioning alcoholic, maybe saw him once a year. He left when I was 2. And then my first job was in radio. And I went on to Portland, Oregon, and became a disc jockey. Now, for those of you who don't know what a disc jockey is, we actually had records. And you young people don't know what that is either, but it was something like this. KYTE 95.7 in Portland, Oregon. This is the Doobie Brothers, China Grove. Have a great day. So something like that. And I enjoyed it, but then I found out that nobody liked anybody in a radio station, so I became a pastor. And in fact, I spent 24 years as the youth pastor, student pastor, evangelism pastor, discipleship pastor, and executive pastor on the Main up at Christ Church in Federal Way. Now, I am retired from the executive pastor world. Last 2 churches, Christ Church, after Christ Church that was. One was called a mega church in Washington, D.C. area, and then another mega church down in Modesto, California. I have 3 advanced theological degrees, that and $1.50 will buy you a cup of coffee at Denny's. And then I'm also an FBI chaplain, have been for 14 years. In fact, I'll be in D.C. for 2 weeks next month. So, folks, a little more personal things, though, that I want to talk to you about is that I am an executive director of Lakeside Bible Camp. Now, some of you heard us last couple weeks talk about that. And if you want to join us, I told the slide people, just put the website up there, because that camp matters to me, and it's just purely lakesidebiblecamp.org. And we want you to come and be a part of camp if you would like to join us. And Jesse and I are going to be speaking at the family camp thing. Now, a couple things. Here we go. Fire hose. I love Coke. I hate Pepsi. How many Pepsi drinkers do we have in here? Yeah, we have counseling here at this church. Come see me after. We can fix that. I love dogs, hate cats. Cats are satanic, actually. I'm a big Macintosh fan. Windows is dominated by demons. And I'm a husky, not a cougar. Sorry. Though I have a lot of friends. I'm a conservative, not a liberal. I love pickleball. I hate soccer. Jesse's out of his mind. Whew. Soccer has no point. Okay, anyway. So an intern came to me in D.C. and she goes, "Hey, we're going to a soccer game, D.C. United. You want to come?" I said, "Not really." "Oh, come on, Ed. Come on." He's a young guy. And so I went, and I stood there for 90 straight minutes. Didn't sit down once. Some bozo behind me with a horn the entire time, and some other guy with a drum that didn't make any sense. And they were all cheering for passes of the ball. Nobody scored. It was 0-0. What kind of nonsense game is that? Okay. C.S. Lewis aficionado. I've been to his home in Oxford. I read books incessantly. Nicolas Cage, worst actor ever. Sorry. He tries to ruin movies. It's like, yeah, anyway. Best movie ever, however, is Sound of Music. I went to Austria just to see where it was in Salzburg, best city in the world. Venice is pretty close. Anyway, best female singer ever, Karen Carpenter. And country music is God's music. Okay, there we go. So now you know a little bit about me. Oh, by the way, might as well offend. A.W. Tozer once said that for a good speaker to speak, he needs to offend at least half the audience. So I think I've got about a tenth of you. I'm going to try a little more. The worst movie, in my opinion, but Christians love the stupid thing, Princess Bride. What in the world? Folks, you need a plot to be a movie. That movie dies when the bald guy dies. Anyway, so stupid. Oh. So we're in John 11 today. I want to let you know that John 11 is the pinnacle point of the entire gospel. John 1 through 10 is kind of public ministry of Jesus. There's a bridge in John 11 and 12, and then he goes on to Passion Week, where he more or less describes the way that Jesus, in fact, ends up on the cross. What we're going to see today, though, in John 11, it's all about faith. It's all about faith, and it's all about God's glory. You're going to see a faith dismayed in the first 19 verses, a faith discovered, 20 through 32, and a faith displayed, 33 through 45. Now, there's no way we can read all of this, but if you have a Bible, you can scan right away verses 1 through 19. You just see what's going on. The bottom line is Lazarus has died, and it's all about his resurrection. And you're going to find all sorts of things that are going to relate to you and me in our faith. If you don't have a Bible, download Blue Letter Bible on your phone. One of the better apps out there. It's totally free, Blue Letter Bible. And so let's just start here. A faith dismayed. What do we see in chapter 11, 1 through 19? Well, it's a serious situation. People are worried, they're anxious, they're fearful. In fact, I would argue in this first section here, everybody is dismayed. It says in verse 1 and 2, now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary, and her sister Martha. Obviously, this Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. Now, the section sets the scene. And you need to catch the scene because it really is a pinnacle point. Directly after this, the Jewish leaders decide that Jesus has to die. This is the final nail in the coffin, so to speak. So what happens? A note comes that Lazarus is in fact ill. Now, what's interesting about that note is that there isn't really anything that he says to do when he gets the note. It just says, hey, listen, the Lord, the one you love, is sick. That's all it says in verse 4. Ladies and gentlemen, I am here to tell you that I believe that those people thought that mere note, that Jesus would know that the one he loved is sick, that Jesus would have just healed him wherever he was right then and there. If you remember in John 4, something just like that happened when halfway there. In fact, it happened several times. There was a son and a servant, and Jesus wasn't even in the presence of those guys. He just healed them. Another point where Jesus stands on this hill and he looks over the city and he says, they are like sheep without a shepherd, and he's extremely disturbed. And you know what he does? He heals them all without them even knowing it. I can just see what they were thinking. And so in this particular case, there's a delay because Jesus probably knew what they were thinking, and he waited a couple more days. In verse 4 and 5, it says very simply that when he heard this, Jesus, the sickness will not end in death, is what he says. No, it is for God's glory. You have note takers, you need to mark that down because it's throughout the chapter. And I would argue it's actually throughout the entire Bible. Everything we do, everything we think, Everything we actually engage in is for God's glory if we're a believer. And every event around us, according to verse 4, that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Now, folks, I don't know you from Adam, and you don't know me. But there's one thing we share if you are a true believer trusting in Jesus, is that our life is to reflect his glory, not just in church. I want you to understand these four walls are just a place to meet. But the real God's glory is found when we do our life, and we all have three different kinds of life. We have the public life, which we're experiencing right now. You're all proper, very nice, not throwing anything, not yelling. That's great. That's public. And then there's the private life, when you're with your best friends, and you let your hair down a little bit. And then you have the personal life, the one where nobody else is around. Nobody. And my question is your life, your behavior, the same in every three categories? Are you the same in public? Are you the same in private? Are you the same personally? Because that's what God's glory is asking for. And as you see in this text, verse 4 and 5, when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 days, and then he said to his disciples, "Let us go back to Judea." "But Rabbi," they said, "a short while ago the Jews tried to stone you, and yet you're going back?" Folks, they are dismayed. Everyone is dismayed. The sisters are dismayed. The disciples are dismayed. There's now people at Martha and Mary's home who are crying. Everyone has been dismayed. And they are really upset. How many of you guys have ever been dismayed deeply in your life? Raise your hand if you have. The majority by far. Okay, I'm a chaplain for law enforcement, have been for a long, long time. And for 3 years, I was chaplain for Bakersfield Narcotics SWAT. And I would go out with them. Even think about this. I don't know why I did it, actually. I was actually trying to reach this sergeant guy who didn't know Jesus, and I didn't think he would come to church, so I decided to go to him, and I called him up one time. I said, "Hey, Danny, your wife and my wife are good friends. Is there any way I could come see what you do?" He goes, "What are you doing right now?" This was at 8 o'clock at night. I said, "Well, nothing." He goes, "Come on down to the Bakersfield Police. We're going out on a raid at 11 o'clock. Now, folks, I don't know how brave you are, but I'm not in that category. And I thought, okay, well, I played tennis in high school all 4 years. I played football. I have 4 letters. I had a 6'7" Mustang in high school. I can do anything. So I go down there. I write all sorts of things about they won't be sued if I get killed and all that. And they give me a police Kevlar jacket. This would be, it was unbelievably big police thing there. And we went to East Bakersfield at 2 o'clock in the morning. Now, there's nothing in Washington that is like East Bakersfield. I'm just telling you that. Anyway, there were 40 different bad guys in this home. 40. All meth addicts and tweakers. And we pull up behind in an alley, and the confidential informant said, "Yeah, they're there, no problem, go ahead and do it," blah, blah, blah. And I get in this, it was like a 76 Thunderbird. It was an unmarked car with Danny. And Danny turns to me and goes, "This is going to be a little hairy. I think you might want to sit here." Done. No problem. And so he goes off, and there's a canine unit that's guarding the back door, and they go on the front, and they go, and I hear on the radio he gave me, he goes, down, everything. Anyway, it's all chaos, blah, blah. And I'm going, okay, well, this is nice. 2 o'clock, East Bakersfield. Police written everywhere. I have a flashlight and a radio. Okay. 4 African-American guys come straight down the alley at my car. One guy bounces out of the back of this house and takes off in the night. The canine guy unleashes the German Shepherd, goes flying into the night, and he leaves. And I am all by myself. And these guys come right here, and then they jump into the backyard of the house next to the one we hit. and started, like getting stuff rattling. They were being kind of loud, if you ask me. And I'm down in the Thunderbird as low as I can. And all of a sudden, the door opens, and this guy comes out with a 12 gauge. What's going on in here? He said a whole bunch of things in Spanish I didn't understand. And he just swung he was just going like this. And the car is here. The 4 guys are here. They're now jumping over my car in front, and they're behind my car, and I'm still in there. And at that moment, Danny goes, "Hey, Ed, you can come on up now." I said, "Danny, there's a gun back here. There's a bunch of guys back here." He goes, "Okay, I'll be right there." Calm as a coat. Unbelievable. My faith was dismayed. I could see the headlines: youth pastor killed in a hail of bullets. I mean, folks, when you are dismayed, where do you turn? These people sent a note to the only place they wanted to go, and that was Jesus himself. Everyone is upset and dismayed, but Jesus says, nope, this is for God's glory. Little theology lesson. Miracles, including this one, always show Jesus' supremacy over life, earth, and nature. Did you know that Jesus is over everything? Did you catch that? And that there is nothing in our life, no issue, no event that he cannot, if he chooses to, intervene on. Miracles always have no other rational explanation. It's not a miracle to say, "Oh, my back hurts, I prayed, and now my back feels better." That's not a miracle. That's God's providence. God's miracle is saying, there's no way in the world it could have happened any other way. And a miracle is always complete. It's not halfway. If you want more on that, I can talk to you about some of the things I've experienced where people claim miracle, and it's not a miracle because it's just so-so, and it's so halfway. But every time I see a miracle in the scripture, it is crazy, and it's always complete. And this miracle is the most spectacular miracle in John. It's the 7th and the last of God's miracle working in Gospel of John's unique miracles. These miracles aren't in any part of the synoptic Gospels. I mean, water turned to wine, healing of the royal official's son, healing of the paralytic at Bethsaida, feeding the multitudes, walking on water, healing the blind guy, and then Lazarus. It's the pinnacle of John. And it shows how incredibly powerful, no matter what our faith is, no matter how dismayed it might be, it's all for God's glory. Now, I know a lot of people think it's for self. You know what, folks? For you taking notes, you can put this down. Self-anything is nonsense. Self-image, self-confidence, self-fulfillment, self-accusation, self. All of it is nonsense because if I see my Bible, it says that you and I are to be for God's glory, and therefore we're supposed to be other-centered, not self-centered. And I can't stand what the schools sometimes are teaching about how important self is and what the media and what our culture does. I think it's all, good word, nonsense. I'll leave it at that. So what do we know? Well, we know Lazarus is dead. It's been a long time. Everyone is upset. Faith dismayed. But then we find a faith that is discovered. And is found in verse 17 through 27. And this is the part where Jesus arrives. So let me just read this a little bit to you. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now, Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, catch this, she went out to meet him. She's not waiting. When her faith is dismayed, she's not waiting for Jesus. She's going to Jesus. Mary stayed home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died, but I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. And Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. And Martha answered, well, I know he'll rise again in the resurrection of the last day. Verse 25, Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she replied. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who has come into the world. So here we have a person, Martha, having her faith blooming right before us. Now, she knew about what Jesus could do. She'd seen it. Mary did too, but Mary was so engulfed in all the upsetness this has made, she stayed home. Later on, she said something very similar. But my friends, I want you to understand that when life is tough, and believe me, it is tough. If you haven't had some tough times in your life, don't worry, you will. If you haven't had your faith dismayed, I guarantee you, especially the way the world's going right at the moment, you will. It's going to happen. And the question is, when life is tough, when your expectations are dashed, when you cannot rely on yourself anymore, where do you go? Dr. Phil? Oprah? Ugh. No, you run to the Lord. But unfortunately, everyone is around you, at least in this scenario, is preoccupied with their circumstances, but not you. Not you. No, you go to Jesus. Because Jesus is the great I am. And there are 7 of these statements in the Gospel of John. And so you know Jesus. He says he's the bread of life. He says he's the light of the world. He says he's the good shepherd. He says, I am the way, the truth, and life. He does all sorts of things. And then in this verse 25, he says, I am the resurrection and the life. In other words, death has no hold on you. And I know sometimes we think and we say it and we would hope we would, but until we face it, until you face it, man, I don't know. I wonder. Now, my faith isn't the strongest. You would think after, being a pastor for long, but it's not. Not when I compare it to the people that are in this Bible. These guys have faith beyond imagination. And I want to be just like them. In 1989, I got diagnosed with a weird blood condition. It was awful. My white count, normal white counts are between 4,000 and 12,000 if you're a normal person. Mine is 2,100. At 1,600, they start giving you blood transfusions. And so my oncologist guy said, this is either leukemia, lymphoma, or AIDS. I go, great. And then I proceeded to pass out right there. Bam, down I went. But he says, hey, we're going to do a bone marrow biopsy. So he did. And he said, you can just go down to the hospital at Good Sam in Puyallup and get it done right now. Now, you guys know what a bone marrow biopsy is? It's where they penetrate the stupid. And I go, hey, doc, does this thing hurt? He goes, it shouldn't. Really? So I wander down to Good Sam. I go into the little procedure room, and the tech gives me a rolled up towel with rubber bands around it, real thin. I go, what's this for? He goes, hold on to it. Okay, fine. And I go into the thing. I face down on this procedure thing. This is 1990. And the guy comes in, he rolls in a cart of needles, all sticking up. And in the back row of this, 18 rows of needles are ones that have corkscrews in them. And he goes, are you doing okay? Yeah, I'm doing fine. And I'm heading down. He pulls out one of the corkscrew things. He goes, now, listen, I can't anesthetize bone, so this is going to hurt. I go, really? Doc said it wouldn't hurt too much. Well, yeah, doctors are liars. That's what he said. And he gets up on my back. He has a little step stool. He puts his knee right in the middle of my back because it goes in your hip. And he just went like this until it popped through. Hurt like no other. I am sweating. I'm groaning, And he says, well, now we've got through. Now we have to aspirate it. Now, I didn't know what aspirated means, but he pulled the needle part out, the tube still in the bone, and he put a high-pressure air hose in there, 1,300 PSI, he said. And he said, now, take that towel and put it between your teeth. Because you thought that last one hurt. This one is going to kill you. Oh, well, thanks, Doc, for that nice reminder. And so I did, and he hit that. Now, folks, I have had many sports pains in my life. Even with the police officer stuff, there have been several incidences where I had to get involved. I've had pain. I have never felt anything like that in my life. I went home to my wife, said, I don't want to hear anything about childbirth again. I've been married 44 years. But my faith was dismayed. Because when it came back, it said, yeah, you have a lot of weird cells in there, but there's no cancer, there's no HIV, there's no AIDS or any of that kind of stuff. But forever, I have to go see an oncologist because he said it's going to turn into something. Oh, that's great. So I have, and every time I go and wait for that blood test to come back, I just worry. I worry, crud, what's this going to mean? But then you get your faith discovered. And it starts getting really, really real when other things start occurring. I retired from being an executive pastor, etc., due to the fact I got cancer. In 2022, they found cancer in my oral cavity there. They tried to fix it in one surgery, and they couldn't do it, so they had to take out my jaw. They took my fibula out of my left leg along with an artery, and in 11 hours at the University of California, San Francisco, on the table, they replaced and reformulated my entire jaw and put an artery in there. It's the craziest thing ever. 8 days in the hospital. They told me I probably wouldn't be playing pickleball till September. This was March. But I needed a walker and a cane for 6 months at least. Folks, not miracle, just providence, but I was back in my office April 3rd. I got rid of the cane April 7th. I played pickleball May 31st. It's one of those things when you get cancer like that, you wonder, golly. And then in 2024, they found it again. It came back. I had radiation all over the place. And they did a robot surgery at the University of Washington. Later that year, CAT scans, because you got to take CAT scans every 6 months, they found a nodule in my lung. In October of last year, they did a surgery in my right lung, and they found I have lymphoma. They think they got it all, which was nifty, but later on this year, they found another spot in the mouth, and they biopsied it. Good thing, it was clean. It was just he called it a 12-letter word. I didn't know what it meant, but he said it was fine. And then through those CAT scans this year, they found a thickening in my esophagus and a thickening in my bladder. And that usually means tumor. So I did an upper GI last month, and they found a mass in my esophagus right here. They didn't know what it was, and they said, you got to come back in a week, and we're going to do a needle biopsy. Now, needle and I don't get along, folks. I can't, am I out? He goes, yeah, you're out. Well, okay, fine, but is this going to hurt? He goes, no. Do I get a towel? No. And the bottom line is the tumor in here is a fibroid tumor, not cancer. And the bladder thickening, they put a camera in my bladder. Now that was fun, folks. Ow is correct. That's right, young man. Holy cow. And all I'm saying is that whole thing, they showed that the bladder was just age. I guess when you age, different parts of you thicken. And I said, folks, sometimes in your life, you're going to meet your mortality. Sometimes your faith is either going to get and stay dismayed, or it's going to get discovered and bloom. And when you face these things, it's not a Christian game anymore. It's not just coming to church and being here anonymously and then taking off to wherever you live, but where you end up at the end of your life and it's time for you to be in front of your God, you have to ask yourself, if I die tonight, am I going to heaven? And if you've put your faith in Jesus, I mean like really trust, not just believe, the demons believe, but you put your faith in Jesus and you're walking with him, my Bible says you're going to be in heaven with Jesus, period. If Jesus happens to ask you why he should let you into your heaven, it's not how talented you are. It's not your family. It's not how popular you've become. It's not anything except that you've put your trust in Jesus and now you live for him. You worship him. You study his book. You serve in his body. And if you aren't serving, you should be. I don't care who you are. I don't care how long you've been. There's always a place to serve. And my Bible says you give to the kingdom too. In this case, through a local body, grace, financially. And if you've never given or you've never served or whatever, you've never really read the Bible, I say start with something, anything. We talk about growth in faith, growth in your prayer life, growth in this, growth in that. Well, I say grow in serving, grow in giving, grow in study. Because folks, life is too short to waste it. And then the famous verse in verse 25, Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and life. Buddha's not going to do it. Evolutionary theory and secular reasoning isn't going to do it. And her response, yes, Lord, she replied, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who's come into the world. Ladies and gentlemen, her faith blossomed right in front of you. And she'll carry that all the way to his death and later her death. We've seen faith dismayed. We've seen faith discovered in the person of Mary. And in the person of Martha here. And now we kind of see that everybody's faith is discovered and displayed. When Jesus saw her weeping in verse 33, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him, he asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. And Jesus wept. Why is he weeping? Hard to know. But he was. He's weeping maybe because of their lack of faith, maybe because they were still faith dismayed other than Martha. Maybe he's weeping over something completely unknown, but the bottom line is in verse 37, but some of them said, could not he have opened the eyes of the blind man, have kept this man from dying? Jesus once more deeply moved, one more time, he's deeply moved. Came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. I've been to it in Jerusalem. I've led tours to Jerusalem. I've been there 6 times. It is unbelievable. It's the most serene place you'll ever go. In verse 39, take away the stone, he said. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there's bad odor, for he has been there 4 days. And Jesus says, did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? There it is again. You'll see the glory of God. And so they took away the stone. And then Jesus looked up and, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you've always heard me, but I said this for the benefit of everybody around here, that they may believe that you sent me. And when he said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. Now, I personally think if he wouldn't have said Lazarus, I think that whole cemetery is going to empty. That's how powerful he is. I'm glad he said that. That would have been a sight. The dead men came out, hands, feet, wrapped, you get the idea. Can you imagine what that must have been like? Because in verse 45, it says this, therefore many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary had seen what Jesus did and believed in him. They believed. They saw, they heard, they believed. The only question I have for you is, do you? Do you really believe? Or have you had, maybe you've been playing a Christian game. Or maybe you only have your parents' faith. You don't really have your own. Or maybe your faith is based on some sort of work model. My Bible says you put your trust in Jesus and he will set you free. And heaven will be yours when you face your faith-dismaying moment. Whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, 1 Corinthians 10:30 says this, whatever it is, do all to the glory of God. Conclusion. Dismayed, discovered, faith displayed, I believe. So I always ask myself, so what, Ed? Nice outline, nifty story, great text, but so what? Well, you just sang a song called I Surrender All. And I'm going to ask you, in the next 30 seconds where we close our eyes and we bow our head, to ask yourself, have you really surrendered all to his glory? And if you haven't, this is a time where you and Jesus have a discussion and you ask him to help you believe. True